Good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Welcome to the Town of Hamilton's March Planning Commission meeting. We do have a full quorum, so everybody is in attendance. If I could ask the board to review the minutes submitted for the January meeting. Make a motion to accept. Or correct.
We have 2 sets of minutes to approve.
Yes, I believe it's the regular meeting
Regular
and
meeting,
the
the
joint.
RDC
Joint.
meeting joint.
RDC.
I'll make a motion to approve the.
Thank you, Carol. I have a motion to accept. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Brad. All those in favor of the minutes as submitted, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, thank you. No old business. In new business, we have a proposed rezone of residential use parcel from institutional to residential core conservancy. Cody Pratt.
So,
I take it that's you, Mr. Pratt.
and if you'll scroll to the next slide, so this is a property at 401 South East Street. It's just south of the elementary school. Outlined there in red. It is zoned institutional. It has been since the oldest map I have for zoning is from 08, and it shows it as institutional. The property is about 0.12 acres. The 4 little lots there below it that are outlined in black are part of it, but those are just the driveway and they're zoned RC. So this is pretty cut and dry. The petitioner is asking to change from institutional to RC. I'm assuming this is probably where the school at one point maybe owned this, parceled it off, and it just kind of got lost in translation. So the house was built in about 1945, so I'm not sure at what point it got parceled off and rezoned. So I'll just go ahead and go into my analysis. There's not really much else to present on this. So next slide, please, Jennifer. Yeah. So like I said, it's been residential use since 1945. Is likely a part of the school property. The rezone is not injurious to public health, and the surrounding neighborhood is also RC zoning on all sides except where the school is. So it fits the general character of the area. The only thing is that it's a little bit larger than what we would allow for a newly platted RC lot, which is 10,000 square foot max. This is about 12,000. However, around it in the existing area, there's quite a few that are more than 10,000. And I don't think it takes away from the character of it to be a little bit larger, and the home's already built. It fits all of our setback and lot width requirements. So as far as I can tell, there's really no reason to not have it be zoned properly. It also works better for insurance and mortgage purposes to have it the correct zoning, because it's institutional is schools, medical offices, university campuses, things like that, and that's just never gonna happen here, so. That's pretty, do you have anything to add? Nope, okay.
Great. Any questions online? I think there's nobody online. Questions or comments from the board?
I think it's straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you.
All right.
You're welcome.
So I'll be in touch with you, and then at the April 11th meeting, the town council will make the final vote on that one. So we just have some housekeeping. You're welcome to stay. It's nothing riveting, but you don't have to.
We won't be.
It's
offended if you
exciting
do.
stuff. But
Yeah.
Looks.
I actually do still have some work that I gotta get.
Yeah.
Back in my office, so
Don't, yeah,
Yeah.
don't worry.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
not-
absolutely.
Offense or anything?
No.
Thank you.
I would-
Not taken. It's
Yeah,
not
sure.
fun
I'm sure you
stuff.
understand, but.
I believe
nevertheless,
so.
You've
I
given
would
me your
stay,
time, I'd
but
like to honor yours.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cody.
Have a great evening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so if you'll go to the Excel sheet. Yes. Perfect. All right. Okay, so I have 4 UDO amendments for you this month. So the first one involves beekeeping. So Jeff brought it to our attention, that there's new Indiana code that states, municipalities cannot completely, prohibit beekeeping. This is really similar to like solar, what's it, our solar, commercial solar. We cannot outright prohibit it, but we can put standards on it. So what I'm suggesting here is due to this new code, the zones that completely prohibit beekeeping, so by neither permitted by right or permitted by conditional use, we change those zones to, conditional use for beekeeping. And then update the definition to add these bolded, additions here in red. So beekeeper to conform to standards established in the IEC Article 18. And then these other sections here, elements of beekeeping. So just adding that to the definition as far as what the article says. That way we stay in compliance with technically allowing beekeeping, but keeping standards. So I don't think we're really gonna have a lot of problems with like conditional uses being requested in these zones. I mean, this is heavy industrial, all of our commercial businesses. Institutional, maybe if it's like a university or something that has a, you know, an apiary class or something like that, that might be something where that applies. And multifamily, I highly doubt a landlord wants to deal with tenants with bees, but so I don't really think much will change, but it'll keep us compliant.
I'm good.
Good.
Mhm.
Good.
Okay, next one we have, is the mechanical equipment landscaping standards. So we kind of looked through this whole section, which is in, chapter 3 in landscaping. And I noticed that for, mechanical equipment, when it comes to platting or, site plan development, we try to have the developer put those big mechanical boxes and things like in the back in an easement. But if it's not possible to do, we do require screening, in all of our new neighborhoods. However, it's 15 feet in all directions from the equipment, and to me, that seems a little excessive, especially if you have a more dense neighborhood that can be like, you know, from driveway to driveway or something, depending on the setbacks. It also has quite a lot of, you know, shrubs and trees that would need to be put in there. So I'm suggesting some amendments. First off, this says it has to be a masonry wall. I think there's plenty of other materials that can look really nice that aren't just masonry. You know, things like wood or stone, metal, things like that, even vinyl, really. So long as it is 100% opaque, I think we're near 100%. I think that's sufficient. So that's kind of part one. And then part two, having a 15-foot radius in all direction of landscaping buffer, I can't really see being realistic in a lot of situations unless they're very large lots, which might be practical. I would suggest something smaller, but I also looked up kind of what the best practices are for plantings around those boxes to keep them safe for utility workers to mess with if they need to. And they suggested no plantings at all within 3 feet around the box, except on the back where they open it up and work on it, 10 feet. So what I think we should do is just require some plantings within 5 or 6 feet on 3 sides and leave the back alone. So that we're not messing with, you know, getting in the way of the utility workers need to get back there. There will still be a wall or a fence covering kind of around the first 3 sides. The other thing is I don't really think trees are appropriate. I would worry about the plantings being too deep, or getting in the way, or, you know, anything like, I think it should just be shrubs. So this link here, it kind of has a best practice. I don't know if can you click on that? Where it says at maturity, you know, you need to have spacing like this, and it recommended deciduous and evergreen shrubs. So, oops. I think there's one more graphic if you go down, yeah, that there, so. They're calling the front what we would call the back, so we have all of them turned inward. Where that's where the fence would go around three sides and leave that open, but it's facing the house. So as you can see, it says 10 feet, no plantings within 10 feet, and then no plantings within 3 feet of either side, but the fence can be 1 foot away. So I think that's a much better idea to make it a little bit more compact and not to worry about root growth or trees falling on it.
Well, I know when we did ours around I talked to Craig Switzer about it and he
Yeah.
was saying the problem is if they need to get to it and then you've got a nice fence or something and they have to tear it up in order to get.
Right.
So as long as they can still access what they need.
Yes, and this does specifically say on three sides to
Yeah.
leave the back open.
Yeah,
So I think it's sufficient to do something a little more compact and also with plants that aren't gonna disturb the electric box.
Could they do the fourth wall if it's removable to access?
I think we could make that an option
Yeah.
if they wanted to.
I think it'd look nice,
That-
and you don't
that's-
have to, but
Yeah,
yeah,
if I was doing mine, that's what I would.
yeah, that's what we did. Ours is removable.
And this applies not only to residents, new construction contractors, but also the utility companies. So that any power substations or distribution that is put in by the town or any gas mains, et cetera, by CenterPoint,
mhm.
they still have to adhere to these.
Yeah, I mean,
From
this should
asking.
be for any new mechanical pad mount box.
Utilities are exempt.
You gotta be careful though, because all the transformer boxes are typically in the front yard.
Mhm.
You want a 4 foot square box in our front yard.
Well, maybe that's what the shrubberies are supposed to be in there to cover that, but I think what we've, done is try to encourage putting them on the back, like not along the street. Because it says where utilities cannot be
Here's in the back.
ground level mechanical equipment in the front yard
I
is
think Gary Glenn's are all in the front.
But we
discouraged.
wanted Carrie Glenn in the front because access in the back is harder
Gary Glenn's are all in the front yard.
Yeah.
New
but
subdivisions
this
are in
is-
the front.
in the front.
They're all in the front.
They're not gonna put them in.
So it says if unavoidable to put in the front yard, shall be screened by the wall and then with the shrubs and the trees is how it reads right now. So if it's going to be in the front,
Wouldn't you
It
rather
is.
have a wall
I
than
think
to
there's
see
two
the
different animals
box?
there. You got one,
Yeah, I
I
would.
mean, what's
one's
mechanical?
one's an air conditioner next to the house.
oh, I'm reading this as the pad mount boxes. Cause aren't most aircon units on the side or the back?
Right,
Okay,
but
So you're saying like an electrical transformer and
yeah, ground level mechanical equipment.
that's
So-
electrical equipment.
if you put an electrical
Mhm.
transformer, like I said, it's two different. You got an air conditioning unit next to the house,
Okay,
which is where they all are.
okay.
You can plant shrubs around that or a fence.
Mhm.
But that's in the side yard, not the front yard.
Right, but all the electrical transformers for the new subdivisions are in the front yard out by the curb. That's like,
Okay.
And we encouraged that because it was easier access.
well, it's easier for but it's easier all the way around.
Right, so
Yeah.
like, then I don't think having a fence and some shrubs on three sides is gonna bother the utility. To work on it, it's just gonna look better than a green box, right?
Then we should
I
ask,
think
ask
the,
Craig.
I think the
Maybe
fences
ask
would look
Craig
horrible.
It would look
And
weird.
get,
I would,
Make
You're gonna have this little cube fence in everybody's front yard.
yeah.
Every other lot would have one.
What a lot
So
of
do you
people
want it to
do
just
are
be
buy
plants?
those fake rocks,
Big
That-
box.
cap it.
I would say something like any unit within so many feet of a home,
Okay,
which would nail the air conditioner.
so,
They're not gonna put that transformer box that close to the house.
right,
Then what are we gonna do with the ones that are sitting 3 feet off the sidewalks? Still require them to landscape around it? I mean, that would be my recommendation. You're gonna have fiber distribution.
First of all,
cable
that's our box.
distribution.
mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that we're putting in the landscaping. The developer would have to put it in and install it. That's how I would read that.
I believe currently the way the UDO states is that both of them require the fencing on 3 sides and the landscaping at 15 feet. So if we want to eliminate that screening and the fencing of the ones up front and within the right of way, we can do that. But right now it does require them to have that.
And
We're
but-
just trying to keep it where
Yeah.
it's not so cumbersome and.
Right. Well, I would think if you have an aircon unit on the side of your house, I mean, do you put a fence and shrubbery stuff around it? Doesn't that mess with the fans?
No, you provide sufficient space
Mhm.
between the air intakes
Yeah,
and the plantings so that it
Okay.
is shielded or masked from yourself and the neighbors. You ensure that it doesn't grow into it to restrict airflow.
right, yeah,
And it's a landscaping scenario in most cases versus
mhm,
building enclosures like that.
That's fine. It's the one out in the front yard. I don't think we can fence.
It has to be planting.
It's gotta be planted.
okay.
That's what some of them have put, was big road
Fake
patch.
lots.
Well, that's not an electrical transfer.
Yeah.
so.
That's not, but there are some that have them,
That are
because you
big
can
enough.
buy them big. You
Yeah.
can buy them skinny for the,
Mhm.
So for like
On a pump.
side yard, AC and or electrical units, how do you want it to be?
It should be
shielded?
side yard, AC, electrical, fiber distribution box, telephony, telephone boxes, cable boxes, any of the gas company, pressure relief or test access points, as well as anything from Fall Creek Regional Waste. Because all of those different utilities are throwing stuff up in various areas and they need to be covered by it.
Okay, so all of these as utilities or mechanics placed in side yards for each home,
Side and front.
side and front. Except you think our pad mount boxes, which are those, should not have the fences, just the landscaping.
Correct.
Okay, all right, so do the fences on 3 sides, as it says, sorry, I'm going back to front and side yard ACs type stuff. Fence on 3 sides, and then landscaping. Do we want to define that as 15 feet? That might be someone's entire side yard. Do you think it should be less?
I mean,
I
just
still
2
think-
feet is gonna be somebody's entire side yard.
Yeah. I
Because
still
the
think we
AC
ought to
and it's
ask
3
the-
foot wide on a 5 foot side yard.
Ask some of the utility companies what they, I mean. we
I
don't
can,
wanna-
I can definitely look into this a little more and talk with Craig.
Yeah, but-
is
Bryant.
there a reason
Yeah.
why we're concerned with the HVAC unit on the side of the house?
Yeah, that doesn't,
Do we want that?
Well, I mean, this initially
Does it
just
make-
said front yard.
yeah. Yeah, I'm not concerned about the
I'm not,
side of the
I'm not
house.
concerned either. I'd want airflow and I wouldn't want any shrubbery overgrowing and getting into that fan. I'm nice
And
and
like,
clean,
so-
and usually they're set up on a concrete or a nice
Yeah,
box.
so if unavoidable, front yard locations for mechanical equipment and air conditioning compressors shall be screened by masonry wall. At least 1 foot taller than the equipment, and then it talks about the shrubbery, so it sounds like this is not talking about anything on the side yards to begin with.
Yeah,
It sounds like it's talking just about any mechanics that are in the front yard. So to me, that would be then, if we do have, an AC unit that happens to be up front, although that's a little odd, or anything else, it would need to have this. So, let me see here. So maybe we just say it, no fence or masonry wall required, and just whatever, anything that's in the front yard has to have landscaping within a couple feet of it.
I guess the only thing that you have to differentiate is residential applications, someone's front yard versus commercial.
Mm-hmm.
If you get into that commercial
Yeah,
side, I don't
that's-
think that the stone and or fully opaque exceeding 12 inches above the structure is unreasonable.
Okay,
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely there's a difference with
Yeah.
residential.
Okay,
Cause I think you're gonna see more of those types of commercial slash utility distribution
mm-hmm,
items in these neighborhoods as the development goes on.
okay. So, so if we're gonna say for mechanical equipment in the front yard for this standard, designate between residential only requires some plantings within so many feet, and commercial has to have a masonry wall, fence of some
And I
sort.
think that's what was approved at here, Glenn, because when you pull in off to the right, they
They
have,
boxed it in.
yeah,
It's
and then they boxed it
Oh,
in.
yeah, a lot
and
more,
then
like,
They
what's
put
this stuff?
arborvitae's around.
Okay, so let's start with residential. We're gonna just do some landscaping only. What should be the radius around it? Cause this says 15, so I think,
That's too far.
I think that's too big. I suggested 5 to 6 feet.
That's too
And
much.
just sufficient to obscure the view of the.
You just need,
Okay, I'll just put
And
that.
that they have eyes.
And they've gotta have
There's
access,
access.
yeah.
Okay, sufficient to obscure the
you need-
equipment. But still,
Allowing sense.
allow access. Okay. I will update that. I do think I'm gonna keep in here though that there should not be trees. It should just be
Yeah,
trees
Yeah,
and
the
shrubberies.
Yeah,
makes
and the
sense.
trees aren't
Yeah.
gonna block it after a while when they get big enough.
Yeah, it might cause some issues. And then for commercial,
I would just say for non-residential,
for non-residential, good catch.
that way it covers everything.
Non-residential is, so this landscaping, so sufficient to obscure equipment, still allow access, plus a fence on 3 sides, or a wall, or something. So are we okay with other materials besides masonry?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Can we get clarification if our utilities and the utilities serving the community, both the immediate and the extended that has not been developed, will have to comply with this?
and do you mean if the town builds it like a,
Correct. For example, lift station.
okay,
Fall Creek Regional Waste decides to pop in a
Hmm.
lift station. Right there at
what do you think?
Falls Park.
I don't know, I don't know.
I'm actually looking into that. You posed that question earlier, so I'm looking into that.
Thank you,
know, so-
because I have an issue that we need to adhere to the same standards with regards to preserving the community. And I want to make sure it's not just a quick exemption that,
So state law says when it comes to like a small cell facility, wireless connections, that is not you are not allowed to impose unreasonable requirements, including requirements concerning types of materials used for screening.
Oh.
So that would be a situation where this wouldn't apply, but when it comes to the other types of what you just brought up, I don't know, I'm just at one point at this point, so.
Right, so Fall Creek, I don't know, but I mean, I know that if the town does install all electric in our subdivisions, but it would be on the developer to put that in, which means that it has to be in their plans, like in their plat, or in the plot plan, something like that, and they would be responsible for installing that, not the electric company.
those
And
new
then-
lift stations gonna go to the front pool,
Okay,
or replace the ones there.
so,
It'll be bigger and deeper, will go right behind the existing one.
And they're gonna put in one off 36 there in front of the
Yeah,
Fall Creek
Mhm.
Corners.
I
yeah,
don't think there's any
So-
landscaping there now.
so I guess since Fall Creek is a,
So we have a lot going on there. Usually we have a wall with connection, electrical connection, control boxes, and panels on it,
yeah,
shut offs,
yeah,
electric meter.
sometimes
Sometimes there's even a generator on those, sits
Yeah.
nearby. If it's a crucial enough lift station, it's gonna have power immediately.
Now, so I think when it comes to different, like utilities like that, we would need to see what their requirements are. You know, like if they cannot have landscaping around for some odd whatever reason. I think we have to respect that as a utility, you know? Or gas, like if a gas, lift station comes over, you can't have trees planted there because,
After you made that comment, if you
Yeah.
look around at those things, there's no landscaping on any of that stuff.
okay,
If you look around the gas
I've never-
terminals out on the roads,
I've never really considered it
there's,
because
they
it's
put
a.
fencing around
utility.
the gas areas,
Mhm.
all for security
Yeah.
We talking about
But you
ones
know-
here and in Hamilton,
here.
cause I mean,
Hamilton County it is fenced and then it is landscaped in front of the fences.
yeah.
Yeah, the
I've
gas
seen-
areas.
Yep.
So if we can legally hold them to do that, most of the time they have to get an excavation in the right of way permit. We can
Sure.
Make it part of that. It's just, I don't know if they're exempt.
Yeah, I'll look into that. I mean, obviously, you probably don't want to, require large trees outside of a transmission or sub-transmission
Yeah.
substation, right? So, for obvious reasons.
Well, we gotta get all equipment in there.
Mhm. So, okay, so I will update this to that and then we will look into if utilities or districts or municipal utility site.
Okay.
I'm surprised they don't do it from a physical security standpoint.
Mhm.
They don't.
Power
have-
normally does because of the liability,
I mean.
because of the
Lift,
personal
the
harm.
lift stations, they gotta get a lot of equipment in there. You gotta get a back truck, hydrovac truck, crane.
But most of that can be done on single side access.
Yeah, let's look into it.
So the other thing that's sort of related to this, as we blow out the infrastructure in particular for wastewater handling,
Okay,
we need to ensure that those systems are built so that they are not creating a nuisance with regards to the fermenting waste in these pump and lift stations that sit there. For those of you that are familiar with the lift station on North Pendleton Avenue, that one has insufficient water flow. It sits there and percolates the entire falls area and all the houses around there in
Where is
certain
it?
times of the year.
Right past the bridge to the right.
Oh, okay.
There's a
Right
geocache on there
there.
too, which is dangerous.
So
Where the T monument signs are.
it's just
Oh,
past
okay,
those,
Yeah. Okay,
because that has been a problem for years. And it's never been addressed.
well, Tim, you're on Fall Creek Regional Waste.
I'll bring it up.
That's out of my wheelhouse.
I know the answer.
The answer is it was sized for a hospital-sized facility to be developed north of there that never developed. Therefore, there is insufficient flow
Yeah.
for the substation to run efficiently and effectively. So it is noxious not only to the neighbors, but all the visitors to Falls Park that come up to walk along the sidewalk and or view the historic monuments.
What we can do, maybe just go ahead and raise the floor elevation, not to make it shallower, so it fill up so much.
The other
I'll
thing
bring it up.
is to put additional water flow in there to actuate the pumps and to keep the fluid moving. Because they do have pumping wells, I believe, farther north as a part of that line. But I'm just saying, as we try to develop a community, some of the things that we have historically done, we can't keep repeating because it just sets us back.
Well, where Carrie Glenn sets now, the school on that. They're not building a school, and that's why it's sized, but. The
Yeah,
school
that-
never, the school never come.
That's why you don't oversize
Well,
until it's.
Yeah.
those stations aren't
You need it, I know,
cheap to
but,
put in.
but that stagnation creates a lot of issues from a water and a wastewater standpoint.
You can raise the gates in those too. I've had to
Yeah,
go help
that's
them do
what
that,
he
yeah.
said.
I've had to do that before. My office is at a wastewater facility. It's not fun. But sometimes you have to do it, yeah,
Smart.
yeah.
Okay, well,
One final question. Do all the screening and development requirements apply to the town with regards to town-owned facilities?
if they're built brand new, yes.
What about expansions and or growth?
I mean,
Okay.
it's the same as any other site that would expand, it has to be brought into compliance. There are certain limitations when it comes to, like areas in the downtown business, because there's limitations on space. And old buildings, but other than that, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, I was just trying to clarify if the town was exempt from any of the development standards moving forward.
As far as I know,
Okay,
Well, and really, if there are any out there now that can be identified, those utilities, the utilities can start to do that with existing.
it's in their budget.
Exactly, and at times it is.
Yeah, but, you know, I would assume that there might be some things we're exempt from, but I think we would wanna, you know. look
Be the
where
role
else-
model.
Yeah, be the role model, for that, so.
When we're expecting others.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, anything else on, item 2? Okay. All right. Subdivision covenants, with the, discussion we had with the Urbans rezone, Scott and I were talking and we thought maybe where the UDO requires every subdivision to have an HOA and covenants, we should include in there that some of the language they need to address is rentals. We can't dictate what that language looks like. It's just, it might be good to have them include that when they're first establishing a subdivision. So what I suggested was they would have to include language that talks about the process for rentals to be established in the neighborhood, minimum lease time, and the percentage rentals allowed within their subdivision. Now, if that, they say we don't want to deal with that, we don't want to do that, they just put NA or something like that. But that seems to be something that comes up a lot with the potential subdivisions. So just requiring them to do that, so there's not kind of going backwards, you know, they're established for a couple of years and then that becomes an issue, you know. So then it falls, you know, usually falls back like on the town and it's like, well, let's just put this in there. So any discussion on that one?
It just, you know, I wanna make sure that we are preventing a situation that happened to the city south of us where an addition was approved and then every home, it was all basically bought out by
The
a
corporate rentals?
corporation.
Yeah,
And they had to enact some ordinances that would not happen. Cause you have an entire community with basically someone far away,
right. The other thing.
not upholding.
We do have now, that we're rolling out soon is a long-term rental registration,
Yes.
form. It was kind of hand in hand with Chief Nodine at the fire department where they have a rental registration program for like commercial uses because they're starting a rolling basis with the territory to inspect all commercial buildings. So we kind of opt on that for commercial, but then we're also enacting this because we have a short-term rental registration.
And I think that
report,
will help
so-
us in our system of tracking the ratios. Like, are we really short on units? How many do we
Mhm.
have?
Yeah,
When we're approving things, the mix of
right.
future apartments,
Yeah.
different types of dwellings, I think we'll be able to better track that and understand our shortcomings.
Yeah, so I think that'll help, and I know with the Urbans property, they had stated kind of what their process would be as far as the HOA approving the rentals, they have to be at least a year. You know, there has to, I think he mentioned there was some sort of HOA registration with them too, so like, just kind of putting that language in there, that something is required to address it. Any discussion with that one? No, sounds good, okay. Okay, and then the last one that I have, we have kind of discussed before. When it comes to the ownership and maintenance of open space, is having the HOA have a maintenance bond in place for, best management practices, is that what BMP is, Kyle?
It is.
Okay. for the storm features, so Jennifer, if you will go to, there's a document in the G drive. Which shows, okay, it is that one. So the highlighted area is what we have now. So this is where I would add it if we dictate that that is something that's necessary. But I didn't know if this was sufficient enough to cover that, because I think when we had brought up this BFP language before, Denise found this after the meeting. So I don't know if that's sufficient or if we want to put that in there. And I kind of forget what the concern was of why that was necessary, but maybe with some other subdivisions, things that happened with the stormwater implements that were supposed to be maintained by an HOA and then they weren't.
Happened on Center Farms.
Okay, so there was a situation
When the
where,
first developer come in and
Mhm.
left, went bankrupt,
yeah,
they dropped it. So all the ponds out there and the undeveloped areas were just let go.
okay,
Plus the mowing,
Mhm.
trash upkeep, the ponds were dried up,
right,
algae or all the above.
Then we had the same issue
Yeah.
in a subdivision north of town.
There was no one, the people out there had no one to turn to,
okay,
just like they live on the moon. There was no HOA, no developer,
right.
the streets were even completed.
So would this be so maintenance bonds are 3 years, typically. And, or could this be a performance bond? I mean, it would be your infrastructure and HOA would have to perform the maintenance of this, for a certain amount of time. Typically, we don't hold performance bonds. It's once the infrastructure is in, it turns over to maintenance mode, essentially.
So wouldn't that be ad infinitum for maintaining it versus a 3 or 5 year or predefined piece?
well, I think the developer would need to have a 3-year maintenance bond to make sure that it was built correctly and it's gonna last. So
And-
it goes for 3 years. But maybe have some requirement that the HOA has a maintenance fund in place.
Okay, a maintenance fund.
So that happened in Jen's neighborhood.
Yeah.
The problem is,
every-
if the maintenance fund is insufficient to maintain it, what is the issue? So I would say that the HOA would assume responsibility for a maintenance
Well,
bond.
the HOA would. Some places require the developer to partially fund based on the cost of the improvements. And then the HOA is gonna collect an annual fee that goes into that fund.
So do they have like a capital improvement plan so they know, 10 years out, 15 years out, what they're going to need that money for, so they can back into it to know to build that fund?
Would that
And
be
having
part
it
of,
restricted,
yeah, would that be part of the ownership and maintenance agreement would be how that kind of,
I look at an agreement
Cycle
different than
looks.
an actual plan of everything that they're going to have to upkeep, your annual snow. And because how do they know how to base those fees? You have to back into it. So they're going, if they have to do their paving because they're private
Mhm.
streets. All of that, how long are those things going to last?
right? So maybe within B here, the ownership and maintenance agreement and a maintenance plan.
I believe a maintenance plan
Would be
because
sufficient?
you have to have that to understand your financials.
I think that's good. So they have to add a plan to that.
My only concern is you can have a great plan on paper, but if it is not properly funded and managed, the plan is worthless.
Well, and that's why you restrict those funds. So you're backing in and
Who restricts them?
the HOA,
Oh,
so
the
when they're collecting them,
Mhm.
those are restricted accounts, so they can't decide, oh, we decided we wanna update our playground, and they're using funds for dredging to buy a swing set. So
I see what
you're
saying.
restricting those amounts in a fund per se, so you're gonna
Would
have
that be
different,
written into
that would be
a
part of that,
maintenance plan?
that. I call them capital improvement plans, but yes,
That'd
Your-
be an HOA plan.
your plan, so it lists out all your items that you're going to be financially responsible for. So you'd have like, they're going to have its own, I'll say, counting groups. And so, you know, in
Yeah.
10 years, we're gonna need X dollars for this one, you know, it's a life cycle cost analysis, essentially. So then you're backing into all that, so you can restrict those funds to those particular accounts. And then you can back into understanding, this is the amount we need to collect, and this is how many
Right.
homes, divide it out for your monthly fees.
My,
But I don't think anyone's that regimented on doing it that
I've never
way.
seen that.
They won't
The other
do it.
thing is, don't the HOA members have the ability to vote and dissolve the HOA?
They
Oh,
do.
yeah.
They do.
So based upon that, in the event that those fees and responsibilities are viewed as burdensome by the homeowners,
But how can they dissolve it if we're requiring it because they have upkeep
Okay.
on their roads?
Well, and,
Oh,
and
no.
the maintenance of the common areas, I think, is the bigger issue, because we usually maintain the roads. Because we take over them. They're
At what
dedicated
point
to
do
the
we take
town.
over those?
Once it's either fully developed or
Okay.
that block has been developed and
Right.
meets the standards.
And then, so that's when
build out
they'll,
those roads and put them in charge.
Can we look
CCMA
into this issue of dissolving?
Yeah, I mean, if we can, I would recommend that we would possibly make it an ordinance to where you require mandatory HOA, and then also that the town requires that HOA be perpetual, or that there be an entity that follows afterwards, right? So that way, you always have something that would govern the covenants at that point. Otherwise,
because I don't think we have anything that says you can dissolve it, but we don't have anything that says you can't.
Can't, yeah,
Well-
so I wanna make sure they can, because when you're talking about all these retention ponds that we're putting in, that's the thing to do now, that dredging is expensive.
well, the question isn't if you can dissolve. State law says you can dissolve, right?
Okay.
But if there is a requirement for an entity to be in existence.
Okay,
So one might be able to be dissolved, but it would need to be superseded by a new entity at that
Cause no
point.
one's gonna volunteer their money for that.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
that's where it would not be a voluntary HOA.
It's the other way around. They wanna get out of it. They don't want it.
yeah.
Right, but the problem is, to your point, sir, it's an issue that we've seen this in several areas where people say, well, the town should enforce these covenants. Not upon the town to enforce the covenants, right? So it's upon the homeowner to enforce it. And that's where the HOA would come into play.
Which I believe our UDO, it does cover if it were to dissolve. We could always change it, but it does by default, if the HOA does dissolve, then it falls on each individual property.
Probably. every-
That's why I read section A.
that is,
Yeah,
that is
that's the point.
inoperable if you were to look at individual property owners maintaining the retention ponds and the large common
Yeah,
areas.
do I think it's realistic? No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
no,
have to
that's,
put
that's
liens.
true.
If
So-
you can guide us and coach us through recommendations here, that would be great.
Yeah.
Because I personally know of several HOAs that have voted to dissolve. And then it's the whole issue on, I'll call it common infrastructure like the ponds,
Mhm.
the snow removal, the road repairs, that the towns haven't picked them up. And then all the common space maintenance.
Well, not even that though, but if economic collapse were to occur and nobody's building anything, and then the HOA dissolves 7 years later, it starts picking up with the building. Slabs are prohibited through the covenant, but yet no one's there to enforce the covenant, so they're building on slabs. Or there's above ground pools and the covenant prohibits that as well. It falls upon the neighbor to file a lawsuit.
Yep.
Okay, so it looks like section A here, responsibility needs some workshopping, like, can we put that kind of perpetual language into that, or do we need a completely separate ordinance like the town has to establish?
I don't know if we're allowed to or not, but yeah, if we are, then let's absolutely workshop that to make that.
Okay, but it can go within our UDO.
I don't know.
Oh.
I'm saying, let me double check that there's no state law that would prohibit such ordinance, so.
Alright. Okay. But I will go ahead and say for section B there, if we wanna add a ownership and maintenance agreement and maintenance plan.
It's fine,
That would probably be good.
starting point.
Some of those professional HOA organizations have that stuff. We just haven't been that involved in our town, seeing that.
Do we have a single HOA that has a professional organization supporting or maintaining it?
Well, right now, Carrot Glen technically does until it's surrendered to the homeowners. So
Yeah.
Carrot
But
That's the, that's the
hires-
builder.
Once that
It's the
happens,
builder, but
it's
they
on.
they outsource that, and they hire some professional
And
organization.
unfortunately,
for
that's
the
where a lot of
interim.
lawsuits come to play, honestly, because they'll retain they will try to retain ownership of the HOA or administration of the HOA as long as they can. Why? Because they get the money for it.
Right.
And, but yet they don't typically do what people want them to do.
Exactly.
And so that's why people attempt to dissolve. So that would also be another thing that we would look at in regards to how long would these professionals have a right to retain.
Because it should move over to the people, it's their neighborhood.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, I don't know what language could be put in there that so long after the last home goes up that obviously we would want bonds for so many years out to make sure that the builder
Yeah,
has done what they needed to
Right.
do.
and we do retain those maintenance bonds for 3 years, so, and we only trade them to that status once it's been inspected and it's passed.
But I do like the relinquished language that the people can, whatever time frame out.
Well, and I would
is
also say that
feasible.
it's not that so much that it would be a requirement for the, if the homeowners wish for that HOA to still be administered by the professional organization, then by all means, right? We shouldn't mandate that it be transferred. However, when I was living in Portsville and West Stream, we were all ready to vote them out because they were doing such a terrible job. There was a provision within the contract that they said we chose to exercise it and cancel this vote and retain the right
Yeah,
to.
we don't want that.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they want that, we're fine, but they should have the right to relinquish that and take it over. Plus, they'd save a lot of money as
So-
well.
I agree with the right to take it over, but my biggest concern is volunteer boards do not have many times the professional competencies to build, like you say, the capital improvements budget,
Yeah.
the operating budgets, to put all of that together. And my concern is that if we dissolve this and they create their own local, is they will not have the skill sets or expertise to properly
Is there
budget, fund, and
anything for
administer.
auditing HOAs? To make sure that they have upheld what the requirements are? So they have to prove we have XYZ restricted funds, we should have hit X dollars by Y year. And it's just a quick audit on HOAs because we don't want, I don't know if you're
Yeah.
familiar with the Florida situation where there was an HOA for one of those big buildings and they weren't doing all that maintenance and it's the one that collapsed.
Oh.
Remember that? And it's because they didn't
Yeah.
collect the money and then all of a sudden you had all these people who are like, we can't pay for this, but it should have been years of people putting into this.
Right.
So it's really, intergenerational inequities were in place and it was sad. And then they were broken. They knew this was an issue. And the next thing you know, several people like buildings collapsed. There were fatalities.
Yeah.
You got the perfect example, Pinnacle Point condos. Mustin built all those. Throughout the building, Mustin was the manager. Mustin collected all the fees for that. To your point, they loved us, they got the money.
Sure.
And they spent the money as they seen fit. Well, now the homeowners didn't like it, didn't like the way it was mowed, didn't like the bushes, and didn't like the way the pond was being maintained. They fired Mustin, and voted in their own board. Now you got all these people out there living together, they can't get along. All right, because these two guys are president, and they want to do what they want to do. And this one get taken care of. What they do, vote these two guys out of office, they got these two guys in office. And change all over again, they still can't get along.
See, that's where
And they don't even want to pay the money, because she don't live on the pond, and he don't live on the pond, so he don't want to pay his maintenance fee for the ponds, I don't live on the pond. They did all the time.
That's where
Never
having
get
a
along.
plan in place, like,
And that
regardless of
Huntsville
what
Farms,
people
your
want.
father developed, I lived, not Huntsville,
My fault.
Hickory Hills. Hickory Hills.
Tree Hills.
I lived in Hickory Hills. No mini barns, no fences, and the covenants. Supposed to establish an HOA. Lived there 19 years. First mini barn popped up, there's another mini barn. Everybody said, he got a mini barn.
Yeah.
I'll get a mini barn. Mini barns popped up, fences popped up, no HOA. Nobody says boo.
I mean, my
Never had
neighborhood,
an HOA out there.
my neighborhood too, it was supposed to, I have the original covenants.
No mini barns.
And no gravel, and gravel gets put right beside as an extra, driveway.
I don't think we'll ever police an HOA.
But I just feel like we need more understanding of what options are out there, because it's really to protect all these people and to protect, obviously, individual homes aren't going to collapse like.
They don't wanna pay for
Florida
anything
situation.
in those, at Pendle Point. They had to twist their necks to establish a roof fund. And they knew the roofs were gonna wear out soon. They had $0. And they're only putting in like $75 a quarter. The roof fund. Which is like that much money compared to like,
Mhm.
not much money they're gonna need. And they
We
bitch
just
and
really
bitch
need to
about
look
that.
into what legal grounds the town can take to. but
If
some
we
of
can
that-
audit or police it, great.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
don't see
think,
that
we're-
happening.
I don't think we.
I think that what term you're probably looking for is a lawsuit on behalf of the homeowners against the HOA. At that point, typically speaking, the biggest issues with HOAs are usually people not paying their fees and then also volunteer boards and embezzlement, right? It's always money. And
Mhm.
so unfortunately, there are issues or there are ramifications that when an HOA recognizes that a resident isn't paying their money, then that's very easy. The HOA files a lien on that property, and if they still have not resolved it, they can foreclose on that property if they wish. So it typically doesn't go that route, but I guess my point is, I'll look into this and I can recommend as much language as I can to protect, to make sure that everything's where we want it. But I don't know how far.
at the end of the
Well, I
day,
believe,
yeah.
HOAs have to provide annual financials to their constituents. And I'll use roughly or loosely the word audit, but not necessarily done by a professional. But I just feel like we need to educate ourselves more deeply in this situation.
If
Because
there's
it's
more we can
protecting
do,
it's
we'll-
protecting the
yeah.
people who are living in these dwellings.
Right. No, I completely agree. So we'll look into what we can and can't put it on the video or make a separate ordinance or, but, yeah, I guess other than that, there's really no way to police it, really. I mean, we certainly.
It's interesting if there's any municipalities out there that do.
Yeah.
I figured it out.
If they do, it'd be Cardinal officials.
Yep.
The thing I would
They
do
don't
is
just
focus
sit
on
HOA
the,
enforcement person.
focus on what I'll call the big ticket items,
Or badge.
maintaining the common spaces,
Yes.
maintaining any roads and or sidewalks that they have accountability, responsibility for, the retention ponds,
Yeah.
the major expense items, so that those don't fall behind.
Sure.
In the
Yeah.
event that you have the multifamily shared wall with common roofs,
Right.
ensuring that
Roofs.
proper maintenance funding is there for the core infrastructure or the core structure. And, fences and mini barns and that, probably less of a
Yeah.
covenant adherence
Basketball hoops.
versus maintaining the integrity of the
Yeah.
neighborhood.
Yeah, we don't want to get into the business of enforcing covenants, because I don't know if you've ever seen some of the covenants on the books from 1940s, 50s and
Yes.
sixties, but yeah. So, but to your point, when HOA does dissolve, it falls upon each and every single homeowner. So really, I think that the HOA should be looked at more as a vehicle on, ensuring compliance to the ordinances written efficiently. And if it doesn't happen, then on behalf of the town, we sue each and every single homeowner individually. At that point. I'm just saying, that's how you would handle it.
No,
That's
no,
what
I
I'm
get
gonna
it.
do.
I
Yeah.
get it.
That's what you wanna do?
So, I said, it's not what we're gonna do.
No,
now.
Well, I would be curious if there's a town out there that requires at least the annual audit submitted to show their
Her
funds.
subdivision's got the perfect storm happening there. It never was developed, the ponds are silted all in, the guy come when it first developed, Gary Glenn, it's lived all the way in the back, where the little pond is.
Oh, yeah, because,
They
well,
wanted to
back
get it cleaned
into,
out, there's no money to clean out the pond, so there's no HOA developed.
well, no, it wasn't just that, it was that the town had allowed where the falls is, because Coronado originally developed that, to tie in, so 55, 3, however many ended up being homes tied in to our retention pond, that 12 homes circled around, but the town never enforced an HOA from the beginning. And I bought under the expectation that there would be one, and I had the covenants, and it all just went away. So that should never have been tied in the way that it was approved, those plats. The town has the right of way around the runoff. So that's why they were able to tie it. But when they were building, all of that mud was coming in and dredging wasn't needed. It was beautiful. And then all of a sudden it needs dredged out, but they handled that legally. There is a legal HOA around there now. There are funds, but I think it's under hush, the settlement. But it was right out of the gate, wasn't even set up properly.
Well, the other perspective is 80% or more of our development is gonna be in these residential neighborhoods, which are higher density, the way that we are allowing them to be built. So it's not gonna be a lot of individuals responsible for their property. It's gonna be neighborhood communities. So we need to make sure that the integrity of those communities are preserved so that we do not end up with drainage problems, public
That's
health
right.
issues, things such as that.
Yeah, and I think it's not, because I don't like necessarily overreach. It's more about having things established because it's easier as someone who's buying into a property. If, oh, our HOA already has this nice plan. We all visit it, there's transparency on knowing where our money goes, how much of it. And I think people appreciate that better, so then they don't have a headache because they don't know that they weren't collecting enough money or it's just being spent where it shouldn't.
Definitely think there's some things we could look into adding for sure. But we'll workshop it with Evan and Jeff and see what maybe some other communities do and what Indiana code says we can't do. So we'll look into it. Okay, so that's all of the amendments that I have. Lynn, any public comment? You got anything?
No, the only problem with HMOs is you have to have people in the neighborhood interested.
Oh,
The longer it goes on, the less interest there usually is. That's just a fact, and that's why old subdivisions in towns didn't have HMOs. Town took care of that.
Nobody likes to be told what to do.
Huh?
Nobody likes to be told what to do,
Yeah,
particularly with their house.
Or have financial responsibility for
yeah.
something
Or
that is
everyone
not.
else.
But Brad, you make a good point on the big stuff. It's not the
Well, they never collect enough
basketball
money. is the
hoops and
problem.
all that
Nobody
other
wants to
stuff.
pay what it takes and they don't have enough money, they're always complaining because it don't do right, grass, pond, or subdivision. We want to talk
Anybody
about.
online?
So
Okay.
do
So I
you have to
need
make a- need a motion.
I have
Table this whole
question.
thing then?
Update on the gateway plan, please.
Wait a minute.
Let me get to that
Okay.
after amendments.
Okay.
So you can, make a motion to approve them as discussed and we'll add this one little thing, for the maintenance. As discussed, we'll add the maintenance plan, lifestyle or life cycle cost analysis. But we'll look into better language. So,
I'd
It's just-
rather see everything rewritten.
okay, so do you want to just leave that?
I'd rather just, I mean,
We don't have to pass the last one if you want to.
well, I'm even thinking on the mechanical one though, I'm not sure.
You want me to talk
what
to
we-
Craig and Ryan?
Yeah, I'd like to just make sure that They've got their
But they're,
input on
okay, so
that
I'll talk with,
personally.
And that we've seen that final language
Yeah,
crafted.
yeah.
sure,
I agree with that approach. I like that.
And if we can hold, I mean, we could probably wait another month on beekeeping.
I mean, we can go ahead and just do it
Just-
right now, we can just do, just one and three,
1, 3.
as discussed.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Hmm.
I'll make the motion. We approve 1 and 3.
I'll second that.
All in favor of approving
1 and 3.
1, 3 and the UDO amendments as discussed, please say aye. Those opposed, thank you.
Phil,
Now, can we discuss the thoroughfare overlay?
Gateway overlay?
Thoughts?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, we met with, a consultant on Monday. They're getting a proposal together for us. I had sent you out the initial proposal, from HWC. So we are gonna go with that firm. So we are just solidifying, we had a good discussion on Monday and fine tuned that. So should be getting that contract here probably by the end of the week, I think. So it'll get going, and I will send you out a copy of it once I get it. But it should be about 4 months. It'll be like a 4-month process
4 months through approval or 4 months for them to make the recommendations?
through approval.
Any way to expedite that?
Is that because of the public feedback?
So if anyone would like a copy of the original proposal, then, I mean, there'll be a few little changes. But I can send that to you if you want a copy of it, just know it'll be slightly revised, as far as the timeline, so. But that's got all of the steering committee meetings, the public open house, presenting it to planning commission and town council, and then adopting it. Anything on that one?
Lynn, you have more questions?
Nope, not tonight.
Denise?
No,
Comments?
good.
Cheryl?
Nothing.
Ellen?
I'm done. Good.
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 Meeting adjourned.